Thank you, Gaines and Wagner, and everybody who supports our cause. I am Vicki Berenson. I am here speaking on behalf of the Safe Skies Clean Water Coalition, which is, we are a very loosely organized coalition of at least a couple of thousand people who are actively opposing the F-35 jets, but also wanting to push the Air National Guard to clean up the PFAS contamination in the water supply that's come into Starkweather Creek. So that's where the clean water part comes from. All right. So I just wanted to say today is Black Friday. It's a day when we often go try to get deals, good deals on things. The F-35s are about the worst deal you could think of. They cost between $90 million and $100 million per plane, $42,000 per 1 hour flight, and they cause incredible harm to our environment. The U.S. military is the largest consumer of fossil fuels on the planet, and jet fuel contributes to about half of that. So when we're talking more planes, more flights, we are talking contribution to climate change. So many of us are here for so many different reasons. For some of us, it's the noise. For some of us, it's the cost. For some of us it's the environmental and racial justice issue where, as often happens, the people who are most affected are people of color and people of low income who don't have a lot of options if they're impacted by this influx of F-35 jets. There's also the issue of what the F-35 jets are used for, and there is a ton of propaganda out there coming from the Madison Chamber of Commerce and higher up that is all about profits for Lockheed Martin and a lot of other defense contractors. So there's a lot of ways of coming about this, and a lot of us have different concerns, but we're all united that we do not want the F-35s coming to Madison. All right. So thank you all for coming. I just want to mention that if you are interested in becoming more involved, there's our website is on all of the signs, and you can go there and contact us, and we can find a place for you. There's things everyone can do, and everyone has done an incredible amount. So I think I'd like to turn this over to Brian Benford, who's agreed to speak with us.
Hello, everybody. My name is Brian Benford. Do me a favor, raise your hands if you can hear me. Great, thank you. First of all, I want to thank Bob Queen for inviting me to come in the Safe Skies Coalition. Before I say anything else, I'd like us all to just take a second and think about what brought you to love Madison. Think about why you came here. Think about why you decided to make your home here. So let's just take a second to do that. Maybe it was school. Maybe it was a job. Maybe it was a sweetheart. Maybe it was the lakes, the fine dining, the vibrant community. Or maybe it was the progressive values that we've all come to love about Madison. We all came for different reasons, but mostly we came with the hopes that we could reach our full potentials. I see that there's parents with kids in the crowd. I know that there are people that have raised their families here. So we all believe in our rights to reach our full potential. I came in 1979. For me, being a person that was multiracial, Madison appeared to be a very tolerant city. Madison appeared to be a very welcoming city. It appeared to be a city that embraced diversity. Now, mind you, that was the lens of a 19-year-old. So I'm here to say, sadly, that view has become distorted by the realities that we have some of the worst insidious racial disparities in the country. Whether it's education, whether it's the incarceration rate, whether it's the quality of life that many of us in our community don't have the privilege of having. Despite this, I raised 5 amazing children here. I was called to service by serving 2 terms on the Madison Common Council, and I'm the past president of the Equal Opportunities Commission for the City of Madison. I am committed to continuing to make this city that I fell in love with a place where all can reach their full potentials. This brings me to the F-35s. These $80 to $112 million troubled flaw instruments of mass destruction. There are many who are completely overwhelmed by the scope and insane implications of our military-industrial complex. I understand that. We can table that for just a second. Instead, I want to say that far more intelligent, eloquent people can tell you about the noise. Even though the Air Force EIS report details horrendous possible outcomes for homes, low-income people of color, schools, and businesses. In this day and age of climate considerations, others that are far more knowledgeable than me can detail the real detrimental impacts of PFAS, where we already know a well that serves thousands have been closed. Now here we all are on this Black Friday. We come together to have our voices heard. Our U.S. Senator has turned her back on us. Our congressman could not make a firm principled stand against these insidious weapons. Our mayor has waffled, and our county executive has been ineffective, to say the least. Now, I would like to give a special thanks to my Alder Marcia Ramo. I would like to give a thanks to my County Board Supervisor, Yogesh. And I would like to give a big thanks to my State Representative, Chris Taylor. In the past, when I describe this issue, I use the analogy that a spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down. I say that because I've often heard there's nothing we can do about it. It's a federal issue. Hearing our elected voices serves to empower us, gives us hope that can be transferred to other issues outside of this. So once again, I need to personally thank my elected officials. This is in comparison to the false perceived economic rewards offered by the Chamber and special business interests. Now, let's all go back to what brought us here then and what brings us here now today. We are here because in the city that we love, there is no place for these monstrous machines. Are we willing to sacrifice ours and others' quality of lives over fake economic benefits? No. Are we willing to be Foxconned over this issue? No. So judging by your attendance here today, I think not. In closing, in this strange, crazy world that we live in, there are so many issues that demand our attention and action. I cannot accept that our collective voices don't matter, that we cannot make a difference. We already have. So as we talk to others, as we remember what politicians are against our right to live in peace, let's use this opportunity as our rallying call to scream, no F-35s. Let me hear you say it, no F-35s. Louder, no F-35s. That we in Madison have taken a principled stand against the military-industrial complex. No F-35s. That we are against the noise assault, no F-35s. That we are against the environmental risk, no F-35s. We are here together today to let everyone know that in Madison we value everybody's right to reach their full potentials. No F-35s. Thank you.
Now we'd like to hear from Angela Jenkins. Angela, are you nearby? There she is. And I do want to just reiterate one thing Brian said, is that this is not a done deal. We know from direct contact with some of the Air Force personnel that they're still thinking about it, and we need to make sure they think real hard.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for having me this morning. I do have a few words to share, and hopefully to keep it short and sweet. In honesty, I struggled to come up with words for this morning because much of what I want to share and said have already been said, published, and testified in many of the public meetings. But I just want us to reflect on a few things. Just a few hours ago, many of us gathered with our loved ones and gave thanks for all the things that we are thankful for, such as our family, our health, friends, and each other. I want us to take a look around and acknowledge the fact that we are here today in solidarity to stand for change we seek as a community on a day where historically it's spent with family and in perhaps one of the most American traditions for a cause, for world peace. We prayed decades after decades, and yet here in 2019, the world is still not at peace. My paternal grandparents owned land in Southeast Asia that was given to them after the original parcel was taken away by the government. The new parcel that was given to them was in the outskirts of, at that time, a city and right next to the military base. For years, there were no basic services such as electricity and water. I recall the sound of generators at night and having to fetch water from the well, and the frequent loud sounds coming from the base. I'm sharing this with you today because I am fortunate. My family immigrated to this country in search of better opportunities and the ability to make choices. We take for granted our freedom to choose and the opportunities that are available, and for many others, the only choice is life. The roaring engine sound may represent freedom for some, but it is the sound of doom for many people. Put ourselves in the same position and try to imagine the trauma each time an unexpected loud bang or whenever the fighter jet takes off, and what those sounds mean to our neighbors who fled their home, leaving behind everything for an opportunity to live. This isn't about us or them, or where one supports our military or not. Our armed forces personnel are also our friends, colleagues, family, and neighbors. They too are impacted negatively by the loud noises and contaminated water. They are members of our community. The only difference is that they don't have a choice. It is not a choice that they can make. We have to ask ourselves if this is the world we want to live in, and do we truly believe in world peace? I was asked what I love most about Madison a few months ago when I ran for city council. My response was that we care. This is a city who knows how to organize when there is a matter we care deeply about. In a matter of days, we've seen groups of people coming together for a march that never happened because there were so many people that it turned into a rally. Yet it didn't stop us, and I am seeing it yet again in recent months in the many community meetings, including our City Hall and this morning right here. We are here together and once again show what our city is made of, that we can stand in solidarity for a cause, and we say no to the F-35s, no to PFAS, and no to the sounds of terror. We want a better environment, clean water, a healthy and thriving community that makes our city, Madison, the best place for all to live. And I'm thankful for all of you members in the community for sharing your day for a future that we can be proud of. Thank you.
And now we'll hear from Jesse Pycha-Holst from Solidarity Realty.
Thank you, Vicki. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, everyone at Safe Skies, for all the work you've done thus far. We've heard strong moral arguments on how the F-35s will hurt the environment. We know that Triage has been leaching forever chemicals down the Starkweather and into Lake Monona. We know that these new jets release even more carbon into the air at a time when the entire continent of Australia is under severe drought and the Amazon rainforest is literally burning down. We know that our military is used to prop up dictators around the world, and we know that the F-35 is dangerously louder than other fighter jets, so much so that entire neighborhoods on the east side of Madison will soon be labeled incompatible for residential use. We know this will disproportionately affect communities of color and people experiencing poverty. The folks we are appealing to are supposed to be our allies, allies who speak about and probably even believe themselves that they care about the environment, the poor, and the disaffected. But if that won't sway Senator Baldwin, County Executive Parisi, or Governor Evers, or the faux progressives on the City Council or in this legislature, then let's talk about money. Whatever happened to good old-fashioned financial self-interest? Tammy Baldwin's support hangs like a thread from this study, and it claims that Truax Field contributes $100 million of economic activity to our community. This in my hand is a bill of goods that we are really being sold. And it says right in the report that this is not a net value. This is an attempt to retrieve our own federal tax dollars. And it makes folks on Senator Baldwin's staff feel like they're doing good for her constituents. And yet it's a total fabrication. This number was produced by adding all of the salaries of Truax staff and estimating the purchases made by the base and the staff over the course of a year. Then, it falsely implies that all of that money will enter the local economy, that it will trickle down our community like clean, Reagan-esque waters of freedom. Bullshit. When Truax needs to make acquisitions of spare jet parts for their base, are they buying that from a local hardware store? Probably not. If they put in an acquisition for food stores to supply the mess hall, is that coming from local Dane County farmers? No. No, and if the Air National Guard staff buy their family holiday gifts from Amazon, or wisely invest in their salaries in retirement funds, does that money stay in Dane County? No. In fact, this report doesn't provide evidence that a single dime stays in this community. We elect leaders to make big, important decisions, and we know that not all decisions are easy. Many policies have winners and losers, but we do expect that our senator makes decisions based on verifiable evidence. And hell, if Tammy Baldwin is so much as buying a used car in the taxpayer's name, I expect her to send out a staffer to kick the tires and make sure that they're actually inflated. And that's what this report is. It's inflated, but it's artificially inflated. Let's go back to naked self-interest for just a moment. We know that the U.S. Air Force, by its own account, that these jets will render over $255 million of residential property as incompatible for residential use. That's the Air Force's words, not mine. How much would you pay for a home labeled incompatible for residential use? The amount That amount of value that will be affected is not the floor, it's not the basement, it is bedrock. That is the most conservative methodology we could use to aggregate that value. And it's from publicly available tax assessments. The real amount of all affected real estate is likely closer to 10 times that amount. Now, if you live on the west side or Maple Bluff and you think the increased jet noise will be too far away to affect you, think again. The massive loss of equity will leave a sizable dent in the city and county budgets. The city of Madison, that means you, the taxpayer, owns considerable property assets that fall under this scope. And if that housing needs to be relocated, who do you think is going to pay for that? Not the military, Madison taxpayers, even all you fellas on the west side. And when some of these properties need to be purchased and bulldozed, who's going to pay for that? Dane County taxpayers, even you folks in Fitchburg and Sun Prairie. When the jets are so loud that investors can't be found to redevelop Oscar Mayer, who loses out on that new addition of the tax base? All of us. And this is ironic. Just a few weeks ago, we couldn't read the news or turn on the radio without hearing the howling and gnashing of teeth over a $40 wheel tax. But hey, losing out on tens of millions of dollars to keep our neighborhoods permanently blighted and keep our lakes permanently toxic just so we can have our own money back sounds like a really great deal. And I'll leave you with this. All transactions are economic activity. So is a back alley mugging. That doesn't mean that I want it in my back alley. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse. Those are things we need to know. There's, just for people to know, there's hot cocoa and tea up here. There's a little table over there and a whole lot of information you can take with you. And I'm going to introduce Brandi Grayson now.
All power to the people. All power to the people. Thank you, Bob, and everyone else for inviting me out. This is an amazing crowd. You guys rock. So I won't take up too much time, and I won't repeat what we already know, right? We know that F-35s will cause air pollutants, water pollutants, land pollutants, will cause neurological, biological, all kind of issues, physiologically, to people who are vulnerable, to our veterans, to our elders, and to our people who are the most fragile and the most disenfranchised by our system. So what we are going to talk about today for my 4 minutes is we're going to talk about white supremacy, patriarchal capitalism. And we're going to talk about it because there is often a disconnect from what we see happening around us to the root of the problem, right? So whether we're talking about F-35s, if we're talking about healthcare, if we're talking about Medicaid, if we're talking about public education, the criminal justice system, mass incarceration, the war on drugs, if we're talking about poverty, where does it all come from? What is the root? Well, what might surprise a lot of us is we're the problem. We are the problem because we continue to allow those with power and money to decide on our policies, on our legislation, decide on lobbying, decide who we appoint, decide who gets elected. And to me, that is not democracy. As we prepare ourselves to fight for no F-35s in Madison, Wisconsin, I want you guys to understand that this is a long fight. Right? We have to be invested. We have to continue to show up. We have to continue to engage in these hard conversations around white supremacy, patriarchal capitalism that leads to even the conversation, the ability for Tammy Baldwin or Mark Pocan or our mayor or our city folks or our alder people to even consider something that's going to be so devastating to people. And a lot of times we like to equate weaponry with military and being patriotic, right? If you're an American, then you have to stand with the F-35s. If you're an American, then you have to stand with the military. But guess what? What does our military represent across the globe? Destruction, violence, the death of children, the death of families, for the purpose of commodifying people and getting power over resources that's not even ours. In the name of democracy, y'all, we gotta understand that that is the root of America. That has allowed for us caging children, caging women. We all sit in this space today knowing that we have children caged and dying, knowing that ICE is coming after people that are our neighbors, that we go to school with, that we work with. So this just isn't a conversation about F-35s. This is a conversation about who we really are, and are we willing to face the reflection of who we are that leads to the devastation and destruction of human bodies. Are we ready? Are you ready? Because it's going to take work, y'all. It's going to take building. It's going to take having uncomfortable conversations. It's going to take us, one, acknowledging that our history is founded and grounded on genocide, violence, right? And brutality. That is who we are. Two, we're going to have to accept who we are. We have to have some real uncomfortable conversations about how did Trump even come to be, right? And we're going to have to accept the answer. White folks are afraid of losing their privilege. And we have to move to a place where privilege ain't even part of the conversation, where we're focused on humanity, right? And we're able to see humanity in every individual, no matter what their race is, their sex is, their gender is, right? No matter where they're from. We have to move to a place where capital, profit, and commodification is no longer the thing we point to for the answer. We have to move to the place where we're drawing the boundary between humanity and profit, my people. We have been living under this umbrella of neoliberalism and accepting it like, oh, it's going to trickle down to other people. Oh, it's going to be okay. Oh, this is how we do it. When the least of us, the most vulnerable, the folks with mental wellness challenges, right? The folks who went to war for us and fought for our freedom as they described it, are suffering, are homeless, and we step over their bodies. Right down the street, we step over their bodies. So as we move forward in this movement of no F-35s, remember that we have to do some unpacking. We have to do some accepting. One, we need to acknowledge white supremacy, patriarchal capitalism is active and alive. Two, we have to accept it. Three, we have to act in a way that's inclusive, that includes everybody, old, young, in between, y'all. And we got to make some compromises. That is what the movement has to be about. All power to the people! Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you, Brandi, for the reminder that this is, however this decision comes down next spring, we've still got a lot of work to do. Now I'd like to introduce Alder Rebecca Kemble, and she's our last speaker, and then we'll have some music, and then we'll go march.
Hi, everybody. That's a really hard act to follow. I don't need to really say much more. What Brandi said. But I do have some new information to share with you. So when I ran for office for Common Council in 2015, I did so because I understood that we are the problem, and I am the problem. We had a national government and a state government that has been completely taken over by the interests of capital, and okay, I'm speaking slowly, but trying to get things in. So that people in how many hundreds and even thousands of days have the Solidarity Sing-Along people been in this building trying to get human beings' voices heard. And they have not been heard. They have not been heard by this body because they make decisions based on what their campaign donors want, and who their campaign donors are people like Lockheed Martin, quite specifically. So I saw our local government, city, county, school board as having not yet been completely taken over by capital, and feeling the urgency that human beings, we need to take whatever democratic space there is left, defend it and expand it so that we can take care of the people, the animals, the water, and the land that are being destroyed by the actions of these higher levels of government on behalf of the corporations, right? So these global issues and global flows of power around white supremacist patriarchal capitalism, they're not just out there. They have to land somewhere, and they land on the ground in communities in different ways, you know, based on the history and who's there. But this is a big one. This F-35 issue is a big one, and it's landing here, and so many of us are standing up to say no, and that's awesome. So many of us that the Common Council passed a resolution mostly against it. We really worked hard to get it completely against it. Everyone on the north and east side and downtown, all the representatives voted for that harder language. But anyways, this community is really not in favor of this action. And because we've made so many public declarations by public bodies, the Assistant Secretary of the Air Force visited here last week. And I heard from Triage's command staff that they have never had a visit from someone so high up in the military until this visit, and that we the people, had gotten their attention. So the Assistant Secretary he opened his statement in this meeting with a few of us elected officials by saying that, you know, we want the right bases and the right places, and Truax has always had the support of the community, and you don't really realize that until you go to other communities where there's an adversarial relationship and commanders are dealing with lawsuits and direct actions and protests, and we don't want that for Madison. So that was the opening that Representative Taylor and Alders Abbas and Rummel and I had to say, well, that's what you're going to get if you put the F-35s in Madison. It was news to he tried. So they have 3 points they're talking about. They're saying we can mitigate the noise, the jobs, and that any concern about nuclear weapons delivery system is unfounded. I'm just going to quick debunk that, and we debunked that with him directly. Mitigation. Over 200 homes in the most impacted area are ineligible for any FAA mitigation funding because previous homeowners and property owners had signed away their rights in an easement to receive such. So they really are going to create a dead zone, a sacrifice zone, for people to either force people to lose all the value in their homes, for renters who are stuck staying there to be subjected to this inhuman conditions that are especially inhuman for babies and small children. So he didn't know that. He knows that now. The jobs. Did you guys know there's a permanent active duty Air Force base at Truax? So in 2015, the Air Force cited the 378th Fighter Squadron, which is not under the command of the National Guard. It's under the command of a fighter group in South Carolina. There's 50 people there. Half of the new jobs, of those 64 jobs, are going to that unit. Wisconsin National Guard is getting 0 jobs from this action. Half of them are going to this fighter squadron. The other half to who? Lockheed Martin contractors to staff the flight simulator, because Lockheed Martin has gotten in the contract that they don't trust the U.S. military to work on their simulator or even the planes. So the Air National Guard might even lose some maintenance jobs. So that job thing is bullshit. And on the nuclear issue, so they put out, the Air National Guard put out an interview with this Assistant Secretary and asking the question about, can these planes carry nuclear weapons? And what the Air Force Assistant Secretary said was, at this time, they are not capable. But what we know, because we do our research and we read in the 2018 Nuclear Posture Review, that the F-35 is the U.S. military's a plan for a tactical nuclear weapon delivery system, and that Lockheed Martin is already working on this Block 4 version of the F-35 that will be capable of carrying nuclear weapons, and that we will be getting them here if the F-35s are here. So no, the F-35s rolling off the line right now can't do that, but the ones in the future will, and anyone living in south central Wisconsin should be concerned about that, because whether or not the weapons are here, these planes are known to be targets by the enemies of the United States military, and they will bomb the weapons delivery system. So that's a huge concern, and one that the Air Force is just blowing off, and ones that Tammy Baldwin is blowing off and Mark Pocan is blowing off, literally laughing at people who raise that, saying, that's ridiculous, don't be ridiculous. So I really listened to that Air Force Assistant Secretary and heard him when he said, we don't want an adversarial relationship, and we need to tell him, it's you bringing the F-35s that will create that relationship. Don't bring them. Tell Tammy Baldwin. Tell Mark Pocan. Okay. And, just one other thing that he told us. So when Brandi and others and I went to Burlington. Went to Burlington, and they told us, when we did our EIS, they got 1,200 comments, and that was more than they've ever received. Well, the secretary told us we gave them over 6,000 comments. So they're listening to us. Keep it up.